your ways, great are your works.
Aren't you glad the Lord's never late? He's always right on time. Hallelujah. And we can make, you know, little adjustments with the weather and all. But you know, there was some young people. I know I was once young, and I went on 2 missions trips, and I knew that the missions trips were going to be mixed with some work, and not one of the working mission trips like some churches get involved with, where they'll take a group of men and they'll go down to South America or Brazil or down in Mexico and spend 2 or 3 weeks building you know, Sunday school departments, or working on churches, or building homes for people. But I knew that we would be passing out tracts and doing some soul winning, and then of course mixed with that there would be some times that we would go through and for sightseeing. You know, after all, I've never been to the, as some say, the Caribbean. And when I went, it was Caribbean, and down the Leeward Islands. You know, it was a great time. I've never been out of the country before. At least I've been out of Illinois. I've been out of Creve, Coeur. Some people have never left Pekin unless it was under protest. But then, you know, one year went to England. Never been, you know, that was my first trip out of the States. First experience of having to get a passport. And, you know, and it was exciting because we got to travel 2 different countries, even though they're connected. We went from London, we went to Scotland, Edinburgh, and it was great. And see that people over there can worship the Lord and experience Him just like we do here in America.
Praise the Lord.
And walking the streets of London, or walking down those cobblestone streets there in Edinburgh, and they took us past the church where John Knox preached, and we got to see you know, just a lot of history, and those were enjoyable experiences as well. But there was a group of young people that volunteered to go on a missions trip, and when they arrived to this location, this was a working missions trip, but they arrived and the yard was overrun with junk cars, and there was trash, there was debris, and it was not one of those pleasurable things that young people had in mind about working. You know, some people have their ideas of what fun work is and what not fun work is. And this was one of those things that was not fun. And it's like it was more than they bargained for. They bit off more than they could chew. And within just a few days, the young people began to bicker and grumble and complain, and it's like nothing was getting done. And the woman of the home that they were there to minister to, she heard this and saw the complaining and the disunity, and she called the young people and had them sit down in her front yard. And she spoke very sternly to them. She said, you see, my children, they need a house, and you can see that things are in disrepair, and there's things that need to be done, and I prayed that God would send me someone to help in what I couldn't do around here to get done. And you were the answer to my prayer. But since you've been here, I've heard you arguing and the disagreements that have been going on. And I just want you to understand that you were the answer to someone's prayer. And when I heard this mission story of these young people, that this woman, her prayer was, God, send me someone. I need some help. You know, her sternness awakened in these young people a right attitude that they had that was so wrong. She awakened within them that they were called there for a particular job, even if it wasn't what maybe they had in their mind of what they would call a job to their liking. And just in the few moments that she spoke to them, they began to have a heart change, a mindset change. And there was, the rest of the time they were there, everything, the whole outlook of these young people was different, because they realized they were an answer to someone's prayer. This morning, I want to ask you a question. Are you an answer to someone's prayer? Each one of us here today, we have that possibility of being someone's prayer, answer to prayer. We don't know who's outside the four walls today that's praying to God, send me someone to show me the way. God, I'm hurting and my life is torn apart and I don't know the direction that I need to take. I'm just kind of lost in this fear of void. But God, send me someone. In Exodus chapter 3, Moses was on the backside of the desert tending his father-in-law's sheep. It's very interesting, the fact that when you read that passage, that third chapter, Moses, we know why he finds himself in the desert in the first place, or the backside of the desert. But he didn't just run for his life to hide out. We see that even though he fled, we find Moses doing something. We find that Moses is occupying himself. He's not finding some kind of a pond or a stream to lay back and do some fishing. But he's working. He's ministering. When you look at the fact of tending sheep, you're ministering. He's helping his father-in-law out. And while he's there, he sees a bush. And he begins to inquire, which also gets the attention of God. Now, so many times we think that God put the bush on fire to get Moses' attention. But when you look at the aspect that not just the fact the bush is burning, but that Moses sees this and not decides to walk away, but he decides to walk to. And it gets God's attention. Because when Moses gets to the bush, God speaks to Moses. It is interesting to see the fact that when God speaks to Moses, Moses answers, here am I. Here am I. All right, now we have two individuals' attention. Moses has God's attention and God has Moses' attention. And then God begins to tell Moses that there's this people that he's heard their cry. And this day I have come down to you. This day, he says, I've come down to them. But how did God come down to them? God has not yet visited Egypt. God visited Moses. But God let Moses know that I've come down because I heard the cry of the people. And guess what, Moses? You're the man to answer their prayer. Isn't that amazing? Think about how far away Moses is from Goshen. And think how far Goshen was away from Egypt. There was a reason that the Hebrew children settled in Goshen. Isn't it amazing how in the eyes of the Hebrews to be a hog farmer was detestable? And it wasn't just detestable to the Hebrews, but it was detestable to God. They weren't supposed to have anything to do with swine, pigs. But for the Egyptians, it was as detestable to be sheep herders. It was just the opposite. They could, they had their pigs and stuff, but to be a sheep herder, it was detestable. So Pharaoh showed kindness to Joseph's family by letting them go to the suburb. Here, we have this town over here, and things of about 40 miles away. We'll let you settle over there in Goshen. You and your people, you and your stinky, smelly sheep, you can have that. But they were still close enough to supply the need of, and to meet the need of the Egyptians, who were slaves. But think how far Moses is removed from the cry. When Moses left, he understood the fact that they were working under taskmasters. They were working as slaves, and now they've just doubled the load. It wasn't got to the place yet where after the 9th or the 8th or before the plagues took place that they began to really have it hard. But the cry of the people went up before God. And God said, Moses, you're my man. I'm sending you to Pharaoh. God, talk to our hearts and speak to us, and that we can be the man, the woman, the young person of the hour to minister to people who are also crying out to the Lord because of a need. From verse 7 to about verse 19, God detailed what he heard that was from the crying of these people. From their heart, whether it was the grief, the sorrow, the burden that they was bearing, that called out. We can be a slave just so long. There are people they serve a slave at their job for 40 years or 30 years, and they finally say, it's long enough, I'm quitting. So they retire. Other people, they may switch jobs because they're tired of putting up with a headache for 2 years or 3 years, and they move on to another job thinking it's going to be better. But there are some situations of life that we just can't get away from. You know, there's people that's their home life is breaking up, and there's, you know, they're going separate ways, they're divorcing because they want to get out of this lifestyle or this situation. But I've seen many people, they divorce and remarry, and the person that they marry for the second or third or fourth time is worse than the first one. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And yet there's something within them that says, well, hopefully this will be better. Well, this guy is going to be so much better, or this woman is going to be... Some reason it doesn't get any better. And I know there's a few there's been situations that were a whole lot better than the first time around. But there was a cry that went up that God sent us a deliverer. God, bring some relief. God, we need some help. And God told Moses, I have heard their cry. I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. As Moses said and answered to the Lord, says, here I am. Isn't that amazing that God says, all right, you said, here am I. Now God says, come, go. You know, we see that Moses makes himself available to God by saying, here I am, or here am I. It looks like he volunteered for a job before he knew what the job description was going to be. Yes, I'm here, Lord. But then when God says, come and go. Come and now go to Pharaoh. Wait a minute. I can't. I've got my father-in-law's sheep. I have responsibilities here. And besides, if I go to Pharaoh, who's going to send me? Who should I say? But see, Moses, you're going in response to someone's prayer. Lord, today, that I would want us to be conscious that we may be someone's answer to prayer. Just because in our devotion, in our closet time, in our quiet time, we have heard God speak to us, and we said, Lord, here am I. And now God says, come, go. Wait a minute. No, that's not what I had in mind. That's not exactly the way I thought it should happen. But God begins to speak and said, today, you're going to be an answer to someone's prayer. Lord, get us into that place that we become an answer to someone's prayer. You know, I've heard it when I was a single person that, you know, that I could be an answer to some young lady's prayer. But like the young maiden who was out in the woods praying, she said, Lord, send me a man. And the voice rung out, who? I don't care, just any man. No. God, send me to an individual that's going to be open and receptive. Not just anyone. Yes, I remember, yes, I know, and I remember there's a lot of people that need to hear the gospel. And we don't need, and I don't mean to minimize the fact that everyone needs to hear. Everyone needs to go to someone. But when you find the one that is really open, the one who is really receptive, because they, in earnest and out of a heart that's broken, they begin to cry out, Lord, send me someone. Open the word, to comfort, to be the healing balm in my life. And Lord, be to us a bush that is flaming, that will light a passion within us, within our hearts, to also be on fire.
Yes.
That we can reach the lost, that we can reach out and minister. Moses didn't realize, as being called to lead, he was going to be also called to minister. You realize that the people that Moses led was not always the most pleasant people. And yet, as God called him to deliver, to be the leader, and that he wasn't a perfect man by no means, but he was a leader. He did his best, even dealing with those Hebrew people. Even though God said, these are my people, they are my chosen people. But Moses ministered to their need. You know, sometimes we can be like those young people. And I thank God today, and I pray, and I know, you know, this may be blissful years, but I know that within this church, there is not the argumentative spirit and the backbiting and the disunity, that there is a spirit of unity in this place, and I desire that the Lord would always keep it such.
Yes.
But we still occasionally still have to deal with human nature. And there's times that we don't always see eye to eye, and that's fine. But when we realize our brothers, our sisters' weakness, sometimes what we see in them is the same weakness that we experience, and that's the problem that causes the conflict. Because we see their weakness, and sometimes we recognize that weakness in ourselves that we don't want to recognize. Because I'm really not that way. But Moses, he ministered to their need. Even in the wilderness after the separation from Egypt's bondage. God help us, because we just might be someone's answer to prayer today. You know, we need to be in that frame of mind. We need to have that mindset. God, don't let a person pass me by, that I may be able to minister today. Because I they might just be the one that I can be used to win them. I might be the one. In closing this morning, there's a song that I didn't pay too much attention to the first, second, third, fourth time. It was airplay. And then one day, Sister Sandra said, have you ever heard this song? I said, yeah. I said, never. She said, have you ever listened to it? I said, well, airplays, but it doesn't mean I always really pay attention. But it's one of these songs that really have a message that you listen to through and through. Because how many times we've gone to a restaurant and we've had someone wait on us and we really don't know what's going on in their life. We don't know how many times an individual may have witnessed to them and it's just kind of, things that just kind of roll off their shoulder and they'll think about it later and they never think. It says, they might be the first, they might be the second, it might be the 11th, the 15th. And all of a sudden, I might be the 15th person that wants to talk about Jesus and bring Jesus to them, and they listen. How many times have we passed the same person? Just think about how many times have Peter and John, even during the life of Christ, when he walked on the earth, walked past that lame man who sat at the gate, beautiful, because the man was 40 plus years of age. Jesus was 30 plus years of age. And Jesus made his appearance at the temple many times. And not one time was there any recognition of this lame man. But after Pentecost, when Peter and John walked past him, they looked on him, had compassion on him. Think about how many other people have passed the same person by year after year. Maybe it's been 15 years, or maybe it's 15 opportunities when they finally say, you know what? I heard it the first time. I ignored it. I forgot about it. And now I'm in this place. And they open their heart. We don't know what people go through to get to the place when they say, enough is enough. And you might be that answer to prayer when they say, Lord, I give up. Enough is enough. Can we be that type of person this year to say, God, let me be an answer to someone's prayer? Can I challenge you in 2013? Moses, he was clueless. I mean, he wasn't praying to be someone's answer to prayer. But God chose him. Will you allow God to choose you this year to be someone's answer to their prayer? A prayer of deliverance, a prayer of ministry, a prayer of discipleship, be a prayer to being a friend. Because it sure is a lot easier to win a friend to Christ than an enemy. But you have to win an enemy to friendship first, and then you win them to Christ. Let Christ be seen in us and our testimony, that we can be and respond to their answer for prayer. Let's all stand this morning.
Lord, in all the earth, great is your power, great is your strength, great are you, Lord, and greatly to be praised. Great are your ways, great are your works, great are you, Lord, in all the earth. Great is your power, great is your strength.